Yo, 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 what's up? It's your boy Guillermo Kiyosuke back with another one. Here to talk about some stuff in the NBA. Simeon Russell's going to be joining me shortly. He has to be out by 6, so it's going to be a relatively short one, but there are definitely some topics to talk about in the NBA. Talk about game two, Lakers versus the Heat. Bam Adebayo's out. We're going to talk about the 76ers hire. We're going to talk about this little back and forth between Kyrie Irving and LeBron James and big idiot Kendrick Perkins getting involved. But yeah, just until Sim gets back, we just probably just talk about some random stuff. So first and foremost, I thank everybody for coming through for that Jets game yesterday. I'm gonna try to do more of those. Despite how terrible the Jets are, obviously the Jets are not going to get rid of Adam Gase. Um, I mean, you want to destroy a young quarterback's confidence, you hire Adam Gase, and once Adam Gase leaves, or once that quarterback leaves Adam Gase, then that guy becomes exponentially better, as we've seen in the past. But yeah, unfortunately, that's a team called the Jets. We our owners don't have much. I don't even know. It's a sad situation, but yeah, there's a lot of news in the NBA right now. Obviously, again, the game two is tonight. As you heard, Butler is basically saying that everyone's count is out, and he's putting some money on it. Not money physically, but he's putting some cheddar on it to say that they're going to win game two tonight, which would be interesting because now they don't have Bam Adebayo, who's out with an injury. They do have Kelly Olynyk, who did okay, but he's not Bam Adebayo. But I would say they lose Bam Adebayo, but then they also have Kendrick Nunn, who played very well that game. I believe he had 18 points, pretty good efficiency, I remember, and he only played like 20 minutes. So we'll see tonight. I'm definitely going to be covering that game tonight, so check me out. And Sim is here, so just going to bring it in. Salute, Sim. How you doing? I know you. Everybody knows. So I know some gossip in NBA, but Sim has to be out by 6, so I'm gonna try to expedite it. But how you doing, Sim?
I'm doing good, man. Doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm good. As you've seen, probably would have. I mean, unfortunately, I have to be at 6, but I know there's some good gossip in the NBA now with Kyrie Irving and KD and that trash. By the way, Simeon Russell just had an episode, The Coach's Corner. Go check it out. It's on Sportscast, so please go check that out when you have the time to. But yeah, let's get to it. So obviously, you see Doc Rivers just got hired as official. He's with the 76ers. Weird situation. You're hearing some chirping from guys like JJ Redick. And he's talking about why Lob City never won, and he's kind of pissed that he's no longer on the Sixers, it seems. But obviously, you have a mercurial. I don't want to say mercurial, but you have a interesting star in Embiid. You have another player in Simmons. They have Tobias Harris. They have Horford. A lot of guys who don't really fit well together. What's your overall thoughts? I mean, I know we talked about it, but now that it's official, do you think that Doc Rivers, do you think that he took this job a little too quickly? Do you think that he's going to be able to get the best out of Embiid in regards to developing Embiid, maybe developing Embiid's outside game to allow Simmons to be able to drive in the middle and all that stuff? So how do you feel about the hire overall?
I mean, I think Doc Rivers is a great coach. I know there's a lot of people that, based on what's happened in the Clippers with Kawhi and Paul George, people doubt him as a coach. I, for one, think he's a great coach. They should have won the series, no doubt about it. And he takes as much blame as anybody else, but I think he's a great coach. And he might be, I don't think that the 76ers have what it takes player personnel wise to make it out of the East. Doc Rivers or not, I just don't think that they have it. I do think that maybe he'll bring, something that they've been missing, I think is, well, Jimmy Butler brought it. Then of course he went to Miami, but just that seriousness, that one person that can be really serious and strict and stern. I think Jimmy Butler was it. That's why they came within a shot of making it to, the NBA Finals, right? Or Eastern Conference Finals, whatever it was.
Right.
I think that Jimmy Butler was that guy, and without him, we've seen what they were this season. And Doc Rivers can maybe bring that from a coaching standpoint. Just looking at the team, though, I feel like they might be, the Clippers of a few years back when it was Chris Paul and Blake Griffin. I kind of look at them like that a little bit. I just don't think they have a lot of talent. I don't think they have enough talent to make it out of the Eastern Conference, though.
Yeah, I agree. I think they have. I mean, just looking at their roster, I mean, they have the guys like Mike Scott, Zaire Smith, Glenn Robinson Jr. They have Alec Burke. These are just other guys besides the heavy hitters. Josh Richardson, who's like, I don't know, I've seen flashes. I don't know if he's ever going to be that athletic small forward with space the floor. But again, this is a weird situation, and you have two guys who can't play to their top potential together. One guy I think is going to be out. He's probably going to be going to Lakers, just my assumption. And then you have Joel Embiid, who, as good as he is, you know, he's a ticking time bomb in regards to his health. This is a guy who, as talented he is, he can't really work out too much just because his bone structure and all that stuff is kind of weak. So, you know, he's had issues with, you know, eating and keeping his weight at a certain level so he could be ready for the league. So I just, and when you look at what happened to the Clippers, I think one thing with Doc Rivers that he's missing, that one thing that he had with the Celtics was discipline. Now, this sounds crazy because it's not as if the Clippers were a team that was, you know, all over it. It wasn't that regards. I know you mentioned this on one of your episodes where you talked about, look, if your coach gets you the 3-1 lead, you're supposed to be able to close it. And I agree in certain regards, but I think that what he had with the Celtics, you had three players, Rondo, who I believe is probably one of the smartest players in the NBA, just in terms of how he plays. You had Garnett, who was, you know, oodles amounts of experience. Paul Pierce, oodles amounts of experience. Ray Allen, the same thing. And it's like they knew it. They had it down pat. Now, exactly. You would think that, yes, he has it down pat, but he's basically the only guy who had that championship level. Poor George didn't have that. Harrell and Patrick Beverly didn't have that. You know what I mean? So I think that looking at the Sixers team, this is going to be a huge challenge for him because I don't think Doc Rivers, not saying he's just an X and O's guy, I don't think he's that, but to get guys to the next level, to that championship level, if he doesn't have 3 or 4 generals who know how to do it like the Celtics, I just think it's going to be a little bit hard. But we'll see. We'll see how he develops them because I think Elton Brand kind of put them in a hole, right? You traded who's that guy? The guy that went to I think he's with the Timberwolves now. You traded Covington, who played. I thought he played very well for the Rockets.
He played great for the Rockets.
And who's the shooter? Zaza, not Zaza. Zaza.
Oh, I know. I know you're talking about. I can't think of.
So he has like a little cut on the lip or something like that.
Yeah.
Why am I losing? But yeah, and he was a good shooter, and I think that was one of the things they missed because if you're gonna play inside out with Joel Embiid, you have to have shooters. So
you gotta have shooters.
I think he has his work cut out for him. I thought he should have went to the Hawks. I think he should have went to a team where he can also work on his own coaching himself, where he doesn't have the spotlight on him. He doesn't have the pressure to get a winner. Right? You have some talent. Even though I don't think they're that high on John Collins, but you have a guy in Trae Young who is an exceptional guard, and you could kind of rebuild that team to your vision. I think he should have taken that. But look, you know, you get fired by a team that people think is still right there. I mean, even going to next year, I think people still look at the Clippers as a top contender. You know, maybe he's a little bit pissed, a little bit mad. So we'll see. But
you know. It was just weird with the Clippers. I mean, like you're saying, you prepared your team enough to be up 3-1 with a double-digit lead in closeout games, right? You know, a lot of people talk about the adjustments and this and that, but I mean, I feel like if you're up double digits, you're up 3-1, you kind of did your job. You know what I'm saying? And you know, the Clippers players when they really start to feel pressure, and people are always like, you know, well, what pressure did they feel up 3-1? Well, you know, when you're in a game and you start losing, that game has its own pressure besides it being up 3-1. And when it really started to get tight, they didn't know how they were going to work certain things, right? Is that coaching, or is it just the chemistry that, you know, they've only been together for so long? Where the Nuggets, they knew exactly what they were going to and how to work it. You know what I'm saying? And the Clippers started to get, you know, they tightened up and they got tense. You know, I mean, how much, I was talking about who's marking. He's like, you're supposed to sit your player down and tell him, to, stop doing this and stop doing that. And I'm like, well, what if he did? And the player still did it. Now what? Or what if you spoke to Kawhi? What if he did speak to Kawhi and Kawhi, went out there and played his game, but he just wasn't hitting or whatever it was. You know what I mean? I mean, it's I guess we'll see with that Clippers team. It's going to be tough because if another coach gets there and they make it to the Western Conference Finals, people say, well, see, Doc Rivers, couldn't get him there. But then someone else could turn around and say, yeah, but they had another year together as well.
Yeah, no. Yeah, George. I mean, you talking about a guy who, I think at this point, he's a great talent, but, you can call him overrated in some regards because that last game he had, I thought was future. Yeah. Unfortunately, they play too much ISO, so you depend on Paul George to give you these ridiculously good games and clutch moments. And he's just, I don't know why they call him playoff P. I heard people now call him pandemic P, but that might fit his name more because I've just seen him not do well in some clutch moments. Yeah. With Indiana, with the Clippers, he did really nothing with OKC. And just to harp on that point, JJ Redick, when he spoke about Lob City and why they never got over the hump, he says, well, I think there's a couple of things. And look, I've talked about this before, and I've used the word pettiness before, or petty. There was some pettiness between some of us. JJ Redick told former Clippers Matt Barnes and all the smoke. Probably, if you look back, and I've talked to enough of the guys now, like we've all matured ever more since then, and we all sort of realized what we squandered by being immature and petty at times. The other part of that is, for whatever reason, I know you said this before too, but the mental toughness, we will lose it at times. It still doesn't make sense to me. So, I mean, partially, look, I agree with you at some point, man. There's only so much a coach can do. But I think that the top coaches, right, in all of sports, they find a way to tap into a mental realm with certain players where they could get these players to play above their means, right? That's why in the playoffs sometimes it's not even necessarily the Jordans or the LeBrons. There's always some other tertiary player that sometimes you never expect. Is like, who the hell is this guy? I mean, he came out of nowhere, and then sometimes the coach can give him to 11. Now, I'm not saying Doc Rivers, like you said, did not tell certain players to do certain things, but sometimes it's not about maybe the X's and O's, or it's about almost psyching somebody up. It's like telling about you're about to go to war and getting them to be like, hey, you're about to die, but you got to serve your country. You got to do all this stuff. You psych them up to be able to go out there and kill somebody. And maybe the second goal is to come back alive. And some of these coaches, some of the best coaches, for instance, in soccer, might go over some people's head, but my favorite team, United, Sir Alex Ferguson was not the greatest X and O's, but every coach would tell you he will hype you up, and he know how to get to you mentally to get you to play at an extremely high level. And Doc Rivers, again, he comes from the old school. He comes from, and I'm not of this tree, but he comes from that George Karl, like, yo, we are grown men. And I would actually love to play with Doc Rivers. Like, hey, you don't even have to psych me up. I hate LeBron. I hate these guys. I hate the Nuggets. I want to kill. You don't have to hype me up. We good. But with this new generation, and maybe he has to do with Kawhi. Kawhi is a robot. Because if you see, I think Kawhi did fairly well in the playoffs, average-wise. Like Paul George, who he puts all this playoff P, and it's like, okay, it's cool in the regular season where you can put these numbers, but let's playoffs, So,
Right. Yeah, it's and maybe he doesn't have that thing that can just, like you said, with Boston and Paul Pierce and KG. I mean, KG just has it anyway.
Right. KG he turned into a demon.
Yeah, KG just has it anyway. And when you go and you look at those Clippers teams, obviously Chris Paul has that, but Chris Paul hasn't ever been able. Chris Paul has never. He's been with New Orleans, the Clippers, OKC, the Rockets. I don't think he's ever been to a Western Conference Finals, Chris Paul.
I think you're right.
I don't think he's ever been to the Western, because the Clippers have never been to the Western Conference Finals.
That Rockets team, though, that wasn't when they played Golden State Warriors. What was that?
I don't know.
What's that?
Was it the Western Conference Finals? Maybe it was, because then the next year they got Melo, that Rockets team. So maybe he went to the Western Conference Finals that year.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they did good.
Yeah, okay. So he made it there once.
But hey, he got in. I think something's wrong with him physically and mentally, or physiologically, where when he gets up to a certain level, there's either this weird injury he'll get, or he just makes stupid decisions. Like in the OKC game, he tried to force the final shot. You're the best player on the floor. You literally have an unstoppable mid-range from that little foul line of the elbow, and he tried to force a pass to SGA. And I said, "That's it. He's scared." Yeah. I think he's a good floor general. He hypes himself up to be like this tough guy, but when it comes to these clutch moments, I think it's something just goes off.
I mean, he's never been there. You know what I'm saying? He just hasn't had enough experience in those moments, too.
Right.
I mean, at his age now, I mean, it is what it is, but he's never really been there like that. So, I don't know. I mean, you know, when I look back at Doc Rivers' Clippers teams, you know, Blake Griffin has turned out to be, you know, injury prone guy that, you know, can put up some numbers, but not an elite guy. You know, Chris Paul is who he is. DeAndre Jordan, you know, I mean, you know, he never got another, you know, KG, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen, obviously. So I don't know. We'll see how it works in Philly. We'll see how it goes.
All right. Yeah. And, let's get to Sim has me out, but I want to get to this juicy stuff because I know it's going to connect to the Knicks.
Yeah, I could probably go about 6'10".
Okay.
Yeah.
Your boy Kyrie Irving came out with his comments. You know, him and LeBron James, these two. Man, these guys fight like a freaking married couple, man.
Right.
You know, they're divorced and they're still going at it. They're probably worse than divorced couples. But this is what your boy Kyrie Irving said. There was, I guess, a discussion on a podcast with his new co-star Kevin Durant. And he says, you know, playing alongside myself, he says, "This is the first time in my career where I can be like that mother effer can make the shot too." And then LeBron James, during his media availability for the playoffs, he says, I guess in response to how he's playing with Anthony Davis, he says, "We're not jealous of each other. I think that's the best thing. Professional sports, you have guys that join forces. Two alpha males is what they call them. They get together and talk about how dominant they can be, and they talk about how this is going to be this. They talk about how this is going to be this and that. I believe jealousy creeps in a lot, and that is the absolute contrary of what we are. We know who we are. We know what we're about, and we want the best. Seriously, every single day, on and off the floor, for one another. We're not just jealous of one another, and I think that you align that with respect. I think sky's the limit." And then your boy, this big Oompa Loompa, Kendrick Perkins, comes in, and he's basically saying that Kyrie is jealous of LeBron, and then Kyrie comes out and says that it wasn't a shot at LeBron. Oh, and these two just losers. How do you feel about? I have my comments, but I'll let you go because you have a more dignified response.
I mean, first, I mean, you know, you say, you know, this is the first time I played with someone that I know can take and make that shot too. I mean, come on. I mean, how can that not be? How can it not be? In my opinion, I mean, LeBron James, you know, is one of the greatest players, at least in our generation, right? How can he not be? You know, how can you skip over it? So skip over him. So there has to be a shot at LeBron, in my opinion. And then some of the other stuff he said in the interview about, you know, we don't necessarily have a head coach.
Oh,
you know, or coaching by committee. You know, it could be. I'm like, what are you talking about? You remember a couple shows ago when we talked about how you know, like KD said it in an interview that he didn't choose the coach,
right,
and that Kyrie was, you know, on board with it, you know, because it had come out that Kyrie wasn't really, you know, that sold on Steve Nash. I mean, that tells it all. Like, why would you say that? He was like, yeah, I could be the coach one day. Jacques Vaughn could be the coach one day. And then KD chimes in and says, yeah, I could be the coach one day. It's like, what?
Two guys.
Like, what are you talking about?
This is why I wanted to root for Kyrie so much, man, because talent-wise, I think he's one of the best guards, and he's only 6'2",
Yeah,
maybe 6'3", and it gets me so mad that two idiots, right? You have one guy who ran away from OKC because he needed structure and coaching, and you have another guy in Kyrie Irving that, let's be honest, he couldn't work well with the coach in Brad Stevens, and we could talk about the Celtics losing to the Heat, but they got further along with a lesser guard who I believe, I still think Kemba's very talented, but Kemba ain't Kyrie. And they got farther along than Kyrie did with that Celtics team. You're talking about guys, when these guys come in, I mean, it must be so much of an insult. Maybe Steve Nash he doesn't care. He's just, hey, I'm just trying to maybe build my legacy, whatever, to finally become that type of coach and then be able to move around, whatever. Because as a coach, I'd be so insulted that I have two nincompoops who are sitting there, these two buffoons who want to sit there and say, basically belittle my experience that I bring in. And you know what?
Right.
Maybe this is why I wish the Heat would win, because I think that coaches need to come back. Now, I'm not talking about players losing, leverage and money. I want the players to make as much as possible, but coaching needs to come back. I'm tired of seeing guys think that they know how to coach, despite the fact that they've been in college for a year. They probably got more coaching in high school or AU because they're so talented. They're allowed to do whatever the hell they want. So in terms of – and they get drafted by terrible teams. And when you think about it, these talented players are really lucky if they find a good coach. Like a guy like who's the guy on the Kings, the guard, De'Aaron Fox. He may never run into a good coach for so long.
Right.
He might sign here and there, but it might be, all right, look, I might not be able to go to championship team, whatever. I might look at Bradley Beal. He took the money and he's stuck with a team that, let's be honest, they're in turmoil. They had never had really good coaching. They're stuck. So for the simple fact that you run into a Bradley Stevens, you run into Popovich, you run into these top level coaches, I think that these players need to have a little bit more respect, because the same is happening with Harden now. It happened with Westbrook. There'll be the same guys that get people in the media to write about, how Billy Donovan didn't coach. And it's like, dogs, you basically were the team. You were the franchise, and you didn't want the coaching. Now you want to blame it on these other guys when you don't win the ring. So Kyrie Irving, for him to say that out of his mouth, I mean, again, him and KD, they're the same thing. It's like two pretty women who know they're beautiful, but they just need to, like, if their attention goes on to another woman for like 2 seconds, they got to do everything in their power to try to bring it back onto them. Why did you have to make that comment whatsoever? Okay, I wanted to play with KD because I like his playing style. It fits me as a guard. He's a guy that he spaces the floor really well. Look, I play with many great players, blah, blah, blah. I just feel personally this is the type of guy that I feel I can gel with mentally, blah, blah. And people would say, LeBron James. But to say that, put like this, as much as I'm not the biggest fan of LeBron James, you also want a ring because of him. You guys want a ring because of each other.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
So why throw these little subtle shots? And you know what I think it is? It's like a little proxy war between these two. Kyrie Irving did not want to play this season. And I think that LeBron James, because LeBron James has basically, he's running the NBA like the KGB. He has agents here and there that smile in your face. Oh, yeah, hey, Kyrie. And they'll expose text messages. And I think that LeBron James was able to somehow get text messages exposed that Kyrie Irving wanted to create that lead. And Kyrie Irving didn't want to play this season. LeBron James did. And I think that Kyrie Irving sent these little subtle shots. Maybe Kyrie Irving is wounded right now. He lost a battle, but he's still trying to put out fillers that, he can still, I still don't like LeBron James. So we'll see. It just doesn't make sense for you to come out with that comment, especially now in the finals, when you could have just not said anything. So.
Right. It's crazy. And KD is just a follower. He's such a follower. I mean, it's ridiculous. He's in one podcast and he's, saying, talking about Steve Nash and, how smart he is, how intelligent he is basketball wise and all this kind of stuff. And then now, it's coaching by committee. What are you talking about? Yeah, Kyrie can be the coach one day. I could be the coach one day. Whatever. Yo, it is going to be hilarious this season. It's going to be hilarious. And I'm looking in the chat, and who's Mark says I concur with Kyrie. Well, you know what? If Steve Nash is going to go to Brooklyn and basically just let Kyrie and let anybody be the coach on any given time, any given day, that thing is going to burn quicker than you can ever think of. Because it's just not going to work that way. Sorry, it's not going to work like that.
So I'm sorry. I had to look up, I guess, the next point we're going to talk about just to make sure I got the right quote. What did Mark say? I just want to see this real quick.
He said he concurs with. I don't know. Okay, I don't know if he's talking about Steve Nash or if he's talking about, the thing with Kevin Durant being the only guy he's ever played with that can, knock down that big shot.
We'll put it like this. Mark, who's Mark? They didn't like the first dude they had. What am I? My brain is mush. Atkinson. They didn't want Atkinson, fair enough. But then they're talking about bringing on time. They want a puppet mayor, a puppet coach. So they can do whatever they want, have as much fun they want. And if they lose, they just blame it on the coach. That
basically
accountability is disgusting. So
right.
But LeBron James is a diva. They're all divas, but what Kyrie Irving's doing, I think it's just proxy war. And like you said, KD he's a great weapon in this proxy war. But the thing about KD and the reason why his words ring so hollow is because, like you said, he's a punk. Like, dog, you go on Twitter, you are a millionaire, an uber talented millionaire with championship rings, and you still got to go online because he's so insecure about himself. And that's the only thing that's made me say, well, LeBron James is also insecure, but I don't know. This drama,
it's crazy. And Mark brings up LeBron James and Tyronn Lue. But the thing is, neither one of those guys are LeBron. I'm sorry. KD, as far as having basketball skill, is on LeBron's level. Oh, yeah. But basketball IQ and being a leader on the floor and those type of things, he is not LeBron James.
I've just watching, and look, again, guys, I'm not the biggest LeBron. So when I say these things, it comes at a premium. LeBron James is passing. Now, obviously, he has AD, he has all these plays, but even when AD's on the floor, when you see LeBron James is processing on the floor, it's probably some of the best I've ever seen in terms of obviously played LeBron James' system, but how he plays that role. And fair enough, he doesn't play well off ball. He's not that type of player. But his processing, I've never seen KD do that. KD, when he came to the Warriors, remember, he used to have fights with Draymond on the court, like not big fights, but because you try to play Uber ISO and do all this stuff in it with him. KD doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. He's just a pretty girl right now. He hasn't gotten ugly yet. He's 26, 27 years old. He hasn't gotten to his 50s where he's all wrinkly and he has to be nice now. He's saying all this stuff now because he can still play. When KD is 35 and people ain't fawning over him anymore as, hey, come to our team, whatever. I'm just saying, man, you'll see all this chattiness, all this stupid bitterness. You probably see these guys want to play again with each other. LeBron James is done with the Lakers and Kyrie Irving after this Brooklyn experiment fails. They probably want to play with each other and go back and play with each other because their athleticism, all those skills are going to start to wane. And they're going to be like, well, we only got each other because we burned so many damn bridges. Well, at least Kyrie and KD. But your boy, Carmelo Anthony, your boy Carmelo Anthony is talking about why the triangle offense didn't work with Phil Jackson. And he says when he tried to implement the triangle, he said when Phil came, it was like, I'm going to do it the way I want to do it, Anthony said. I've got to bring in personnel that fit the system, that I'm trying to run. This guy doesn't fit into the triangle. I don't want these type of guys. So he started to slowly pick the team apart and putting in his pieces that he felt would work in the triangle. And he said, we can't play a two-guard front when we have Derrick Rose and Raymond Felton, Anthony said. You can't do that. You can't put Derrick Rose in a two-guard front when that's not his game. We need Derrick Rose up and down the court. So how do you – I know, Carmelo Anthony is your boy. You wanted to give him a $100 million contract this offseason to come back to the Knicks. But how do you feel about – I'm only joking, guys. But how do you feel about, Carmelo? I think it's something deeper than that, but I'll get to it after.
Yeah, I feel he's partially right. I don't think you – I I mean, you don't come in with a system and say this is just the system we're going to do, right? You got to fit. You got to fit your system to your team. You know what I mean? And if parts of it is like, okay, yeah, I understand. I liked his idea of having. We need a system that, you know, when we go out and get new players and free agents and this and that, it's going to fit inside of this system. Right. But I think, you know, you don't just throw an entire system. You know, you have some philosophies on the way that you want to play, right? And then you fit your game inside of those philosophies based on the players that you have. You know what I'm saying? And then, you know, you make sure you get players that fit those philosophies, because if you expected Derrick Rose to throw the ball into the high post and run to the corner and be satisfied with that, a guy who shoots 27% from three, 28% from three, you know, that's probably not going to work. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So I think I partially agree with what he was saying, but then also I don't know if Melo wanted to have a system where, okay, this is a system and then we can plug players in. If Melo would have been a little bit more open to running some of those things, the triangle was probably perfect for him, you know, because of what he does and his skill set that's on the floor. You know what I'm saying? It probably would have been perfect for him. So, you know, I think that, you know, he probably didn't have an open enough mind to say, let me try to make this work. You know what I'm saying? As far as the triangle was concerned. And then, of course, you know, with Phil Jackson being up in the office and somebody else coaching, and if you're like, we got to do the triangle, mm-hmm. but I'm not the one coaching it. You know, like Phil Jackson saying, we got to do the triangle, but he's not the one coaching it, and expecting someone else to come coach it. I think, you know, that's not a good recipe either. You know what I'm saying?
I think that now I agree with everything you said, right? But I think Phil Jackson, you know, he's quirky, right? But he is because a lot of these guys have like weird military backgrounds or some connection. So I think that they take a lot of their talents in regards to coaching to be able to tap into the psyche of a player, right? Certain players you can do that with, like Michael Jordan, Shaq, Kobe, Pippen. I think that because I think Melo was mad at the fact that Phil Jackson wasn't going to come down and coach, like kind of how like Pat Riley did for that championship year. I think that Melo, I don't know what Melo would say. He'd probably say, "Oh, LeBron James is blah blah," but I think Melo would say Jordan's the GOAT in his eyes. You know, some people try to take tidbits here and there from Jordan in terms of his playing style, and Melo, to me, I'll give credit to Melo here that he's probably one of the best offensive talents I've seen, you know, in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. You know, Kobe said that he was one of the hardest guys to guard. You know, Melo, and this is a guy who just never got foul calls with the Knicks, so he probably could have had even more scoring titles, or been up there for just more than that 1 year. But Melo, to me, I think that he was mad that Phil Jackson wasn't going to come down. And I feel like any instruction that he was going to get from any other coach was going to be like, I think it was like a proxy war where it was like, all right, Phil Jackson is going to say, you got to do the triangle, because guys, there are triangle concepts in the NBA. Now, Phil Jackson, I think, wanted to do it too much to be like, no, I'm going to show my dominance over you, Melo. You're not going to have control of the team. Because remember, over Phil Jackson was James Dolan. And James Dolan loves Carmelo. So I think it was that. And then you have Melo on the side like, yo, like, they brought me here for a reason. We're not going to run triangle 24/7, you know, have the game go through your best player, which in some regards is correct. Have the game go through your best player. And I feel like, unfortunately, there was never a balance. Like, obviously, yes, you have Raymond Felton, you have Derrick Rose, who are more Felton, we had Stoudemire, at least, when he ran that pick and roll. These guys are more up-tempo guys run the floor. But Melo also never really sacrificed his game. And I think that this hurts Melo more, or it hurts him now, because let's be honest, with the Blazers, you know, imagine Melo playing with that Blazers team with his mindset now, but with his physical prime back then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right.
Because why do you think the Blazers, you know, I was one of the guys saying, hey, I don't feel sorry for Melo stuff, but I have to admit, it's like, yo, I want to, not to say I would hit Melo, but just want to like give him a gill, like, yo, bro, you could have been doing this for years in terms of how you come in. He's increased his corner threes. You played to a system and you played it to a T, but you could even been more on the offensive end and the defensive end if you just married yourself to a system, I think. And I understand people say, oh, he didn't have the point guards or that stuff, but it's also kind of hard. And it's happened the same thing with Giannis, where these guys are so good and sometimes they don't want to sacrifice themselves to a system. The coach is stuck to saying, all right, well, Giannis doesn't want, he's not shooting threes well enough. So the proper spacing, we have to change all these aspects of the system to kind of fit Giannis more because he's that good of a player. Same thing with Melo.
Right.
Melo could have run the triangle. Melo could have ran a lot more pick and roll. But Melo, even with the Linsanity, Linsanity kind of figured out. I understand he got hurt and that stuff, but when Melo came back from an injury, instead of staying more on the perimeter to allow Jeremy Lin to run the pick and roll with I think it was Tyson Chandler back then, whatever, Melo wanted the ball on the block, and that clogs up the lane. And Jeremy Lin is not that explosive type of player. He needs the spacing. So to me, Melo, I know these guys are talking now. I get mad when I see these uber talented players. And I know people think I hate Melo. Look, I've been following Melo since ABCD camp. I was following Melo when it was him, Hakeem Warwick, and I believe, was it McNamara? The point guard at Syracuse. And they won that championship.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then people are like, yo, LeBron's better. No. Melo is better than LeBron. Because Melo was that guy. He had that heart. And I rooted for him. When he was on Denver with Nene and J.R. Smith, I rooted for that team. I like that team a lot, man. But unfortunately now Melo's prime is matching up to his physical decline, unfortunately. But
right, and the triangle, slow, predictable, but Melo was a mid-range king. I mean, the triangle was made for that mid-range game. He would have, and maybe you're right. Maybe he's like, we got Phil Jackson up here. You want me to listen to Jeff Hornacek and Derek Fisher? Come down here and coach me and maybe that was because I do believe if Phil Jackson would have came down and coached the team, he probably would have been able to reach at least Carmelo a little bit differently. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And now, in Portland, he's playing that style. I mean, I'm pretty sure he realizes that Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, they're better than him at this point in his career. You know what I'm saying? So he has no choice but to, play that third role. But he can still score in that mid range, still score in the post. He can knock down those threes, and he's, I'm assuming he's looking and saying, I can feel that I'm a little bit slower. I can feel that, I don't have the same ability that I had before. So I've got to play this role. But if he took that mindset into earlier in his career, it could have been at least, when people were trying to get him to do a few certain things with the Knicks. Now in that article, I think he wasn't wrong though, when he said, I played with like 100 different players. I mean, the whole thing with Carmelo and the Knicks and his time with the Knicks, it was on everybody's part. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, it was just Marcus saying what?
He's saying that Woodson was able to reach him. I would love to see. Well, the thing about Woodson is that Woodson ISOs way too much. When he finds a player who has exceptional ISO skills, he doesn't try to improve other aspects of a game. I think he relies way too much. And someone just said, I said something nice about Melo. But I've been saying Melo was my favorite player until he came to the Knicks. Like, I used to love Melo's game when he was on Denver. But when he came to the Knicks, obviously that whole trade, yes, we could blame it on James Dolan because James Dolan is the owner. I just didn't like that Melo, I didn't like the lack of foresight Melo had with regards to, okay, if I come to this team, look, they're not going to win this year. There's no need for me to push this trade. Let me come next year when they can have all these guys. I have a little system there. And even I don't like the coach because D'Antoni's not a great – I don't think D'Antoni's a great coach. I think he's an okay offensive coach or okay coach, good offensively. Everything else is kind of whatever. You get a Woodson here. Now imagine Melo being with Woodson, but having all those players, the Landry Fields, the Mozgovs, Gallinari, Wilson Chandler, Amari Stoudemire, even though he's kind of whatever. You could talk about, him breaking down physically. But at least that first year he was excellent. We don't know how it could have been. Maybe it could have been different. And Felton,
right.
You have a framework of all these talented players, young players, and you could build them around Melo. And then, okay, Felton's not the guy, but we go into next year, we draft whoever that might fit better with Melo. Or we bring in a veteran point guard, a guy like Billups, who knows how to get the ball to a Landry Fields, that knows how to get the ball to a Wilson Chandler, that stuff. So, it's a great hypothetical, but
yeah, I mean, if I was Melo, I would have did the same thing. I would have wanted my money to be grandfathered into the new CBA. I'm not even gonna lie. I would have wanted my money.
Okay, so if you got the money, then you can't. Not saying he's complaining now. I know he's just talking about the triangle, but you can't go on ESPN like you did. In your cashmere sweaters, talking to Stephen A. Smith, talking about, man, just messed up, man.
The thing is, they had the opportunities to put players, and they messed up. They messed up when they amnestied Chauncey Billups and signed Tyson Chandler, right? Because they would have been able. First of all, Chauncey Billups is an excellent point guard to have around, even though he was older. Yep. He was still a leader. Because then you go and get Jason Kidd, right? He was just as old. You know what I'm saying? I mean, an excellent leader, a guy that you needed to have if you have Carmelo Anthony on your team, because Carmelo Anthony respects Chauncey Billups, right? I mean, you've seen the difference when Allen Iverson was with Carmelo Anthony and when Chauncey Billups was with Carmelo Anthony. They went to the Western Conference Finals. Big difference. You know what I'm saying? He was a guy that you could have had around, and then later went and got Chris Paul. You know what I'm saying? Instead, they amnestied Chauncey Billups and signed Tyson Chandler. Mm-hmm. That right there to me ruined it. And
there's also that rule that we could have gotten Chris Paul as well too, but
yeah, and then they turn around and they get Jason Kidd, who was obviously a good signing, and they get all those old guys. You know what I'm saying? And put some pieces around Carmelo to have a successful season. Should have went to the Eastern Conference Finals, but but if they would have had Chris Paul instead of Tyson Chandler, and then found a center, find a center that could make do, I think it would have been a lot different. But
I agree. But hey, guys, Sim has to be out. He has to go bribe the next RJ Hampton or the next Devin Vessel, who's going to be going to college. He has to make sure he signs a contract so Sim gets 15% once he's drafted. But
you know what I'm saying?
It was fun. Sim just came out with an episode, a coaching episode on, I believe it's only on Sportscaster. So please go check that out. Go sign up. Why you guys aren't signed for the Sportscaster? Don't check that as much. Please go out and support Sportscast as well too. Also go support Clutch Points. I'm definitely gonna be coming to the game tonight. It might be somber, but my son Jimmy Butler. There's something about Jimmy Butler that I never say die attitude. So hopefully you guys could join me. But again, this was fun. I apologize because I've been so busy this week, so I had to push it to Friday. But hopefully
we get back
on a Tuesday, Thursday schedule. Hopefully you guys can join me. But if not, salute, peace, and God bless. See you guys.
Peace.